Hello, and welcome to episode 41 of the Peterpodcast. I'm your host, reporter Taylor Clydesdale, and with me today is Don Vassiliadis. Don is running for re-election in Monaghan Ward in the October 22nd municipal election, and today we're going to be talking about whether or not Peterborough is going to be ready for oncoming growth.
You want more people, and you want to be a city of 100,000 or over, because again, it's then you know on a tax-based side you have less to worry about. So we're getting there. But I think we're going to have to really move. Sense of urgency, I guess, is the best way to put it. Every project we do has to be on time. Mm-hmm. We should have been planning 20 years ago for this, but we didn't, and so now we're playing catch up with it.
And we're also going to be talking about transportation, the Parkway, and housing. So, hope you enjoy the show.
Well, I'm Don Vassiliadis, and I'm running in Monaghan Ward again. I'm an incumbent, and it's been a great honor, of course, running in Monaghan Ward, and of course, being a part of Monaghan Ward. I live in Monaghan Ward, and that's why I'm running in Monaghan Ward. So that's a big
in Monaghan Ward?
In Monaghan Ward, yes.
Oh,
that's
okay.
right, Monaghan Ward.
Yes,
just so you know,
yeah.
yes, that's right, and in the West End. But yeah, we call it Monaghan Ward, just so you know. Yeah. So, anyways,
us on the west side.
Yeah,
that's what we call it.
The West Side. Yeah.
I'm not on the west side.
It's okay, but West rhymes with best. So I mean, that's
okay.
what it really does. But
all right, so you're running in Monaghan Ward,
and why? Of course, I live there and grown up there, and I believe you should run where you live, and I think that's a big part of the way the ward system is set up.
Mm-hmm. So why did you initially run for council, and what are your reasons for seeking re-election?
For me, it was natural progression. I was part of many community groups and organizations like United Way, the YMCA, Showplace, Crime Stoppers, and those are just a few, right? Normally, I think a lot of people that are running, they could give you 2 or 3 pages of what they've done for the community. And it's a natural progression of community service. And so I think that's a big part of it too. And for me, it's the next step. So that's why I initially ran. Again, why I'm running again is that the first 4 years had been a great learning experience. And you really have to talk to a lot of people. You have to catch up constantly. So, I mean, a second term would be, you'd be able to finish what you started in some areas. I've definitely had a lot of fun talking to people. You return a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, and you have a lot of discussions at kitchen tables with people and in their living rooms. And it becomes very kind of close relationship with your constituents, where you're actually visiting them at their home and talking to them, and perhaps even sharing a meal or a cup of coffee. So it's that's the level of government I really enjoy. You see the direct impact, and I'm a huge fan of it, just a huge fan. So
what are the conversations that you're having at the doors with people? I mean, not just while you're campaigning, but over the 4 years that you've been on council.
Well, I always say we live a charmed life in the West End, and sometimes it's sidewalks and trees, and most recently it's fixing the existing infrastructure that we have. And of course, what are we going to do with transportation issues? As you know, transportation was my assigned portfolio, that and fire services. As far as transportation goes, I mean, everybody wants to know, how they're going to get to point A to point B, and again, the impact that it has on our roads and so on. But generally, it's fixing the existing infrastructure is what I'm hearing. And again, everybody wants a proper road to drive down, and they also want us to meet our timelines. And in my area, it's Park Hill Road in particular, and it's a pet peeve of mine that it's not completed by now. That particular construction or job was supposed to be completed by this year, basically. So we're about 1.5 years, 2 years behind. So what that means too is that a $23 million project becomes a $25 million project. And that was based off of our staff not meeting their timeline, and also not acquiring the land around it. So those are the consequences of not meeting your timeline. And that we also have a subdivision there along Chandler Crescent that needs a new road and needs that whole area fixed. And it's growing as we speak right now. There's still building houses there. So we really need to concentrate on making sure that people have a proper intersection and roadway in that particular area, because it becomes very specific, when you're dealing with your ward.
Mm-hmm. So how do you, make the promise to get those improvements done over the next 4 years? Because I can already feel the Facebook comments and the tweets saying, he's already had 4 years to get this accomplished and it hasn't been done. So how do you, sell people on the fact that if I have 4 more years representing your ward, that I can get this done?
Well, first of all, I understand every detail of that compared to anybody new coming in. So I think when you look at it too, and I've consistently said how my disappointment on the staff's part of not completing their timeline. So, I think I've championed it as much as I can, other than having to go out and actually be a part of the operational side. We're not operational. We're the decision makers, but we also can push in certain areas to make it happen. So, I think that's one thing. It's good to understand that, again, we're not operational. Other than me going out and laying the asphalt for it, I'm not sure what else you can do other than keep pushing for it. But I've also identified the idea that it's going to cost us more money. And but I've openly said that throughout my last 4 years. I wanted that particular project done by now, and it's not. And am I disappointed? Absolutely. So it's up to me to keep mentioning it, keep pushing, and it will get done faster. I find that the more you push, the more it becomes a priority. So I have been doing that, definitely.
Yeah, and I know Park Hill, we're going to be talking about the Parkway a little bit later. Park Hill is just one of those routes around the Jackson Park black hole of transportation, if you will. So it is one of those critical areas that, you really want to be moving people around just a little bit faster than how you are now.
For sure. And remember, too, because I live in that area and my children go to Crestwood, I drive it all the time, too. So I understand. I understand the pain of you're going to a wonderful wide open road, which seems like it's just a luxury, and that compared to the rural road that you're driving down, and where there's an intersection to houses that to a subdivision that has 500 houses. So you can see every day that you drive that, which I generally do, that it's a problem, right? So I feel the same pain as everybody else in the area too, where you're driving along there and you see the traffic, and the sight lines are bad, and the particular area that we're gonna do next year or begin at again is the hill that's there. We're gonna lower it 20 feet, and the sight lines will be better, and then the intersection will be safer. So I see the importance of all that, but again, I live there. That's how come I know that too, right? So that's a big part of it.
Is Monaghan Ward the one that's going to have the roundabout?
Yes.
That's
yes, right.
The city's first roundabout.
First roundabout, again, West Best, first roundabout, so it's all good. But,
assuming there's not a car crash there on the first day that it happens.
This is, so, and again, the big question is it going to be wide enough or big enough? And I think, we've had that discussion with any of the engineers too, and it will be. It's always compared with Highway 28 and the roundabout there. It's going to be the first roundabout, and we'll see how it works. But again, that's the exciting part of this project, is that we're going to have a first of many things with it. And also too, it's a part of the active transportation part where you can walk safely along the road. And we have, there's a lot of children in that area. There's a lot of active people in that area. And in the rural side of it all, it's not safe. But when you go to the reconstructed side, it's beautiful. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And even taking a walk or a bike ride along it, because I live there. I want to use it too. It's a great area, and it connects with all the Jackson Creek trails too. So which is just, actually, you don't see that anywhere in the city. So again, another reason to live in that area.
So I've been noting to people, I don't know if I've ever said it on the podcast, but kind of my ward to watch has been a mix between Town Ward and Ashburnham Ward. And I know at Ashburnham Ward because there's a lot of proposed and a lot of planned development in that area. But then Monaghan Ward, it's the same way, because you've got, there's a subdivision. I'm not sure what the progress is right now in the subdivision for Park Hill.
Batten White, is that the one?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And from what I understand, it's still OMB the decision hasn't come back yet. So it's just laying in limbo right now, from what I understand.
And then there's the Lily Lake Road subdivision
as well.
And
that's the big one. Yeah,
there's a lot of farmers' fields in that area that are not going to be farmers' fields over the next couple of decades.
Yes.
So yeah, what's the plans for growth and development in that area?
Well, again, it's being on the transportation side. How are we going to get everybody safely from point A to point B in that area? And that's what we're looking at in 2019 with the new transportation plan. So that's a big part of how we're going to do that. And again, we seem to be playing catch up, which is unfortunate. And again, we've been playing catch up on Park Hill again, not to go back to that, but we are. And just, so, that's a big part of it is how are we going to get people safely and, properly to that area. So that will be looked at next year. And again, our last transportation plan was done in 2012. So it's been 7 years. But when you look at the last 7 years, there's been a lot of change on how Peterborough is going to grow. So it's time to look at that too, and what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, and I know right now we're looking at two. I mean, if you look at the expected wave of growth that's going to be coming with the 407 extension, I've talked to city councilors, I've talked to economic development leaders, I've talked to business owners, and what they all say is that we need to be ready for when that 407 extension hits, because there's going to be a lot of people who want to move here, who are going to want to buy houses, who are going to want jobs. And do you think we're going to be ready for that incoming wave of growth?
Well, my hope is that we are. When I talk to developers, they're selling homes before they're built. So there's obviously a huge demand for housing.
And I think everyone's heard of Millbrook, where hundreds of homes are selling out basically overnight.
Right. Yeah, this is it. And even before they're built again, right? Yeah. So obviously there's a demand, and it's an interesting situation to be in as a city. You want growth, really, and you want to you want more people, and you want to be a city of 100,000 or over, because again, it's then you on a tax-based side, you have less to worry about. So we're getting there, but I think we're going to have to really move. Sense of urgency, I guess, is the best way to put it. Every project we do has to be on time. We have to be decisive, like on our decisions. We have to make sure that we make our decisions based off of what's the best for the city with any kind of transportation plan. And I mean, these are all the things that we've seen to lax over the last say 20 years, right? So we should have been planning 20 years ago for this, but we didn't, and so now we're playing catch up with it. So but anyways, that's a big part of it. And will we be ready? My hope is, yeah, we'll be ready. And because again, it's a sense of urgency. We all know this is coming, so let's be ready for it.
Every election that I've witnessed, everyone says this is the most important election that we've ever had. There's always that one person or a couple of candidates who say that. Sometimes they're trying to toot their own horn and make it seem like they're more self-important than they are. Sometimes it's legit thinking that there's a lot of stuff in the works right now. Yes. And I think this is an important election because there's a lot of proposed growth on the plate. We have the expectation that there's going to be a lot of people who want to move to Peterborough in the next couple of years. There's an expectation that, the housing crisis that we're dealing with is going to be resolved, that we're going to get more jobs. So I do think that maybe it's not the most important election that Peterborough has ever faced, but I do think it's definitely a very important one. And there's a lot of important decisions that, if reelected, you would be tasked with dealing with. How do you expect to manage that?
Well, again, having 4 years experience helps, and it helps me understand how to maneuver through City Hall. And again, you have a lot of more of a connection with staff, so you understand what one staff member can do over the other. And that's a really important part of being a counselor, is understanding how City Hall works. And so, I mean, I know that I think it's a pretty important time to be one of the decision makers in Peterborough. There's no doubt about it. So when you see all the growth and everything we just talked about, it's coming. And what are we going to do to be ready for it? And I think you do need the people at the table to move with, again, this sense of urgency to make sure that projects are done on time. And again, now that I understand a lot better on how to maneuver City Hall and how to talk to staff and how to work with staff, which is really important, because you don't get anything done unless you work with staff. I think that's how I'll move into the future, definitely, and with the city. But it's certainly, I don't want to be the one to say that, but I mean, I think we're at that point where our growth will be not comparable to the past. I think you're going to see a faster growth. I mean, it took us forever to get from 80,000 to 83,000, it seems, recently, so, but you will not see that down the road, because, people are coming. Subdivisions are going to be built where, 6 to 7,000 people will live in that one area most likely. And other subdivisions are being built too in other areas of the town. I'm just talking West End, not overall in the city. So we know it's coming. And again, those of us that have been around the table the last 4 years, that's all we've heard. So it's loud and clear that we have to be ready. So we're going to push as hard as we can to be ready.
And one of the conversations that's part of the growth conversation and part of being ready too is jobs. Making sure that we have jobs that, just jobs in general that people can go and make sure that they're employed in this community, but also well-paying jobs too. Because not everyone wants to work at Tim Hortons when they move to a new community.
No, it's true. And jobs are important too. And I know that the discussion of employment lands and annexation came up, and we need that space to create more jobs. And I think that the type of companies you'll see that will come to Peterborough, from what I've heard and understand, are obviously your high-tech companies, but not so much a company where there's going to be 500 or 1,000 people. It will be more or less smaller companies of 50 people or 100 people at the most. But you're going to see a lot of that now.
Yeah, the days of large-scale manufacturing in Peterborough are kind of over then.
Yeah, well, from what I can see, it's I think you're looking at high-tech companies, as we know, and jobs 10 years down the road that haven't even been invented yet, or come up with yet. So I think you're looking at, that's what you're looking at for the future of Peterborough. And I mean, we're obviously getting in the fiber optics and different things that, as you can see, half of Peterborough's dug up from Bell doing that. So that's an interesting investment from a company into Peterborough. I think it's $36 million. So,
and just to talk about high-tech jobs, you've also got the Clean Tech Commons, which is currently being developed right now.
No, and I'm a huge fan and supporter of that. And I think that's one thing that this council did that we're not talking nearly enough about. And even right now, you reminded me of it. It's certainly, it's something that you want everyone to know. We have this area for employment that will be unlike anything in throughout our area, surrounding areas. So it's comparable to other cities that have been hugely successful in having that connected to their university, but they're real jobs and high-end jobs and jobs that you could stay with for years and years. So that's great for Peterborough.
And part of the frustration that I hear from graduates of Trent or people who are close to graduating, and Fleming as well, is just that it's frustrating because you want to stay in this community and you want a job in Peterborough because it's a good community. Yeah. And it's frustrating that you graduate and the first thing they have to do is look outside of this community for jobs because you want to be able to stay here.
But that's a good example of addressing that. Clean Tech Commons will help them with that problem. I mean, it's a great example of us kind of paying attention to that and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do about that. So it's very much, it's not talked about nearly enough. And I know we had a big discussion about annexation and employment lands, and that seemed to be missed, that we are doing this and this is happening, and it's a great relationship between the city and Trent University, and it will continue to be, and it will grow and grow. So that's a huge plus to what this council did do. One of the things that it did during the last 4 years.
Okay. I think we're going to take a break there.
Great.
We'll come back, refill on water.
Right on, sounds great.
And we'll talk about a couple of key issues that I think people care about.
That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, cool. Be right back.
All right, thanks.
So we're back on the Peter podcast, and we're going to be talking about a couple of issues that I'm sure are probably being talked about at the door, and you'll probably be dealing with over the next 4 years. In no particular order, let's start with the Parkway and transportation solutions. And
and that's something, again, it's a part of my portfolio. So I'm really focused again on the area that I'm representing. So the Southern Corridor has come up at the doors consistently.
That unbuilt section between Clonsilla and Medical Drive.
That's right. It's always good to define where that is, because it's Parkway talk for like that particular section. And that actually should be built by now. It really should. And that was one of the first things that I ended up voting for in the budget. I remember a vote came up, and do we need it? Absolutely. A lot of people have been talking about it. It would ease congestion on Clonsilla and going through Goodfellow, and you hear it all the time. And it would get you right up to the West End and in no time from Lansdowne or any of those other areas, right? So that's something that I've been pushing for. But of course, it's been squashed by the by the provincial government too, because it's of the overall plan of the Parkway, right? So because that's a particular section. So that is the main topic at the door when you're talking about the Parkway. That's what my area want. Definitely.
So what's your answer to that then? Because right now, the Ministry of Environment says you can't piecemeal the Parkway, and if you build any one section, they might view that as piecemealing. And in order to build any part of the Parkway, you need to do the environmental assessment for the whole thing, and that it could potentially be a very costly plan.
Yeah, no, well, that's why we're doing a new transit review, or sorry, not transit review, transportation plan. Sorry, a comprehensive transportation plan, and so and we're looking at options on. If we back away from the idea of the Parkway, which I really don't want to do, I prefer that we go forward with it. Then could we do those pieces and what would help our getting from point A to point B best, right? So that's why we are looking in 2019 and doing a comprehensive transportation plan. Our last one was done in 2012. So it's time to look at what else can we do, what are our options. But again, if we can go back to the Parkway plan, let's do it. If not, then let's move on with other options too, right? So
yeah, and right now we do an official plan review that's ongoing. Is it time if city staff say now that's expected to wrap up in about 2019?
That's right. Yes.
And these studies under this new transportation plan are expected to last a little bit longer. So I don't know if the timelines necessarily match up, but is it time to remove the Parkway from the official plan?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I mean overall, I see why it can move people from from the south to the north really well, and I think when you look at the north end, I know they have tremendous traffic problems. I hear it from the ward councillors all the time, and that's why they push hard for the Parkway, and I do know that when you look at the official plan, I mean there's been all kinds of ideas of options of what we could do. I think it comes down to if we're not allowed to build it anyways, then we have to look at other options, and I think that's what it's really come down to, because it's in the plan, and essentially we should be ready to go on it. But if we can't build it, then we have to look at new options. And I think that's my best answer to it too, because obviously we want to build it and we're not allowed to. So this is where that's why the new transportation plan will help us deal with that. And I do know what my area wants, and I do know that what the north end needs, and would it help? Yes, it would help with the traffic flow. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I think that's the tough position with being pro Parkway is even if you do want to see the Parkway get built, are you able to see the Parkway get built? Do we have? Is it getting too costly to do it? Because on top of the fact that there may be an environmental assessment that needs to be done, which correct me if I'm wrong in terms of price range, but that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars to do.
I think it's about $6 million to $7 million. We're like in millions of dollars. Yeah, absolutely. And not just that, it could take 7 years.
Yeah.
So you look at that 7 years, and we haven't made any moves on making transportation any better, our roadways better, because we're stuck on that. That could be an issue. That could be a real issue. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that's what people need to understand is that, obviously the votes are there to build the Parkway, but we're not allowed to build the Parkway. So where do we go? Like, we have to come up with other options or solutions. And that's where I'm at too with the new transportation plan and what we're going to do with that. But the plan will also talks about all aspects of transportation too in it, which is great. And even with the transit side, which we were talking about in our break. So that, we're looking at a new transit review on how our bus system could work better. And, that's something that I pushed hard for during my 4 years, is that we obviously need to look at a new system. The downtown hub system seems to be very outdated. We're looking at a system where we could potentially have satellite hubs, in every area of the city, the west end, the east end, the south, the north, and then maybe a smaller hub downtown. But and then you'd have express routes going out from those hubs that would basically you'd have routes in those particular areas. So instead of the 40-minute routes, you'd have the 20 or 15-minute routes. It would be quicker, more efficient, more people would take it. And so that's what we're looking at too, along with this this transportation plan, all those aspects of it, even active transportation, when you're talking about cycling, it'll be in there too. So we'll cover all aspects of it, not just the roadways too. And because whenever we talk about the transportation plan, usually Parkway comes up, which is one of the really important aspects of it, but there's many other aspects of it too. And even our traffic signal lights, having a more intelligent system that adjusts on its own with traffic flows, and you will see that too. So we're going to embrace technology, that's for sure. And one thing, even on the transit side, we've introduced a new intelligent transportation system that, again, transit app was a part of it, and you're also looking at safety features like cameras on buses and so on. So we've come a long way with that. But again, there's more to do. But I've always embraced technology when it comes to transportation, and I think you're going to see a lot of new things come about down the road.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of anticipation for transit improvements as well, because a lot of people have expressed the opinion that transit hasn't really improved that much over the past few years in Peterborough, and it's kind of about time that some pretty drastic improvements are needed.
Oh, for sure, and that's why we're at this stage now. Over the last 4 years, you get started the first year, and I mean, at least we were able to introduce a few things like the free transit on New Year's Eve. That was a fully sponsored service, and so meaning that the taxpayers didn't actually pay for it, someone else did. And we went from no trans on New Year's Eve to a free transit on New Year's Eve within a year. So
till how late did the bus at 3 or 4 a.m.?
That's right. No, and I rode the buses from 12 to 3, and it was a great time. Everybody was happy. Happy New Year, thank you. Everyone was very polite on the bus, I found, and maybe they were just celebrating and they were happy for that reason. But it was a great time, but that's an example of what you can do if you gather a few people together, get some sponsors, and what it meant too is that it gets everybody out of the downtown area when the bars close, which the police like, right? And then it also gives people an option for a safe, warm ride home. Last New Year's Eve was minus 25, and I rode the bus, and I'll tell you did not want to be standing outside for too long. It really was kind of almost damaging in a way. Yeah. But that was an added thing that we did do. Even stat holidays, it runs now on stat holidays when it didn't before. And again, the new transit app will be a big deal. The community bus service is something that is our first continuous route. So meaning it doesn't go down to the downtown transit hub. That's a big deal. So all of these things are pluses during that time that we never had before.
Do you foresee any pushback happening from decentralizing the transit hub from the downtown, especially from business owners or through the business community downtown?
At the moment, no. Again, and I haven't heard anything from the downtown area. The idea is that there still will be something going down there. There still will be maybe a smaller hub. But again, once the review's done, we'll know exactly what it is. But they'll get the same attention as every other part of the city will get, and so there'll still be plenty of access to take a bus and go downtown. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on from transit,
Sure,
let's talk a little bit about PDI. I know right now we're the conversation about PDI is kind of at a place where the deal is pretty much done. I don't see there being any way of the city backing out of it. It's currently, if it's not before the Ontario Energy Board for approval, it will be shortly.
Yeah, from what I understand.
So maybe you can tell me a little bit about what your stance was in the Parkway when that decision was made and where you stand with it now.
Yeah, no, with PDI, it was. I mean, we had a great discussion with people. Again, a lot of meetings, and at the end of it all, when you ask Hydro One questions, they couldn't come up with answers. So that to me was the first, problem that I had with it. And then I was looking for options too, because normally you want to look at the options and say, well, if this doesn't work, what's our plan B, or who else will we talk to? But there was no other options given, right? And so I think that was a big problem for me too. And at the end of the day, I didn't really want to saddle the residents of Peterborough with Hydro One and their lack of customer service and unable to answer questions. And there was a few issues there that I had. And you had Hydro One saying, we're going to don't worry, we'll get better. We'll get better. And we've all experienced bad customer service from them. So and a lot of people that I've talked to did. And there wasn't one believable moment that they were going to get better. And and it was like a bad relationship. Don't worry, I can do better, but it's never going to happen. So that was a big part of it too. But again, the option part of it all too, we should have had more than one option. And because that's how you weigh out whether this is the best decision. You look at all the options and you say, well, that one works best. And so we didn't have that going for us too. But those were the two main reasons. And I realize that it's going through now, and you have to work with you don't win all the votes that are out there, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. But
so what happens next? Because there's while the sale, there were a lot of opponents to the sale, including yourself. It's going through, and right now there's a projected revenue for the city of $55 million. So what do we do with that money?
Well, again, from what we've been talking about too, it's invested. It's believed that we can get 6% return on it. You're looking at an extra $3 million of revenue every year. I would prefer either we could bank that, or we could certainly work on our infrastructure. When you look at it too, we have our utilities. We have our PUC, PUG, PDI, all this. We used to have PDI, but it it does generate revenue for us, right? Mm-hmm. And so last year overall, our utilities made I think it was $5.5 million. This year it made $9 million. So we're not losing really on any of this. And so when you look at that money, that's revenue that is coming in that other cities usually don't get. So say you add another $3 million to that, and then you have money coming in from the casino and other areas. So we're actually doing quite well, I think, when you look at overall revenues, because the only other way we have of generating revenue is to raise taxes or build subdivisions where you have a tax base too. So we have a few bonuses that way, and that's still one of them. I mean, if that's the money we have, I would prefer we invest it, we get a return on it, and then we use that money, or we bank it, or we use it to build, deal with projects, whether it's the arena or whether it's and when I say even the arena or the twin pad and the aquatic center, put it towards that. I mean, it makes our community better. It serves our community that way, right? So
yeah, and I know there are between that there's a couple of other expensive projects, the potential memorial center replacement as well. Yes. So you've sat in on budget discussion. Well, you've been a part of budget discussions. Yeah. What's it like to make those decisions where city staff say we have a budget of X amount, and here is the full list of things that people are asking for money for, and making those decisions? What is that like?
Oh, well, I think obviously we follow or we look at the staff recommendations, and I always look at it in a way too that we are in the front lines of understanding what people want. That's our job. That's that connection that I keep talking about that I really enjoy. So I mean, if there's issues that need to be brought up, of course that's the time to do it. And generally, you have a pretty good idea when you go into the budget what people want. We see people come forward during the budget time saying we need this and this and this. What people don't see or hear about are our phone calls that we get, our emails that are of other people that don't necessarily stand in front of council too. So I take from what people talk about in council when they come to speak to us and say, hey, we need this. And I also take all of the emails and the phone calls I get into consideration. And if something needs to be done, you do it. And I've had a few opportunities to change up the budget a bit and to be a part of that. And that's pretty amazing too, when you can, whether it's there's some needs that are needed there, or putting money into another project too, whether it's a capital project that you need in your area. We have two areas that need our roadways done on Sherbrooke between Woodglade and Brayley, and Brayley between Lansdowne and Sherbrooke. Those are areas that I'm going to make sure there's money in for, because you're going to look out for your area too, and that's a big part of it. And you'll see ward councillors, looking out for their wards too during the budget. And that's what I intend to do too, is that there's 2 projects I know that are coming up after Park Hill. And the one on Sherbrooke is a safety issue, and it's a problem. There's a new school there. There's schools all in that area, and children don't have a proper sidewalk and roadway to be a part of or walk on, and people driving too are having issues too. So that's those are the considerations I think of when I get into the budget. And again, you're always representing your area. You have to remember that at the end of the day, what do your constituents in your area need too?
Yeah, so we're just about to run out of time.
Sure, yeah.
Before we do, though, we've already had a conversation about housing in the first half.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to talk a little bit about affordable housing, because that's one of the perceived needs for our community, is that what we need is more affordable housing for some of the low-income people. And right now there's also the perception that there's a shortage of it. So what do we need to do to resolve that problem?
Well, it's interesting too, and I think some of the discussion too starts with our post-secondary institutions too. A lot of new students are coming in. I know on Trent, and I sit on a Trent city committee, and so that conversation has been happening too, because they have a big impact on the city too, on people and housing. And even when you look at student housing, sometimes that's considered affordable housing too, right? So it's just a matter of how we can work with them, because I think that's a part of the problem too, is that you want to make sure that you have proper housing for the students, but both institutions have been taking on a lot more people, and I think that's a part of it. And we have had those discussions, and those institutions are very good in dealing with the problem, or talking with us, communicating with us. But I think overall, even when you look at the intensification of downtown, it is happening, and we are planning for it. And I do know that more and more people, do seem to be renting out certain parts of their homes too. And they might be looking at a way of paying their mortgage or doing that too. I do think Peterborough is adjusting to it. We're just not necessarily seeing it. And there does seem to be what seems to be an ongoing issue. But I mean, we are trying to adjust to it, and again, we're talking to all the major players in it too, right, to make it happen. But I think you're gonna see it's gonna be an ongoing problem that we have to keep adjusting. I mean, we're growing at a quick rate. Our post-secondary education institutions are growing. And that is a part of it, really, for the need for housing. That's a part of it that I've noticed anyway. So we've got to work with them. We've got to work with the groups that advocate for affordable housing, and obviously we got to be part of that discussion during budget. That's when it all kind of happens too, right? So, but yeah, again, ongoing adjust, and that's what I think we have been doing over the last 4 years.
All right, Don, is there anything else that you want to mention before we wrap up?
No, other than I live in Monaghan Ward, and I like living there, and I certainly run where I live, and it's been an honor running in Monaghan Ward for the last 4 years, and I'd like the opportunity to run again in the next 4 years.
All right, Monaghan Ward.
Monaghan Ward, all right.
All right. Thank you, Don, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And to everybody else, we will be back again soon.
Great, thanks.